Comfort is very important to a sick society because a sick society's only purpose is to create prisons of any kind for its denizens, or well, we can call them deviants. Yes, because a sick society occurs when people become accustomed to and also comfortable to being immoral, to being anything else but the morality of their own kind, of their own race, or whatever way you want to call it. In a sick society, comfort is paramount because when you make prison cells comfortable, whether they are states, whether they are cities, or, well, the family's own apartments also, yes, their own homes, when you turn them into prisons through the ignorance of people, and well, people being kept in ignorance deliberately, well, when that happens, the point is very simple. The door of the prison cell may be open, but the people are too distracted by their comfort. They're afraid of the discomfort that may lie outside. Yes? The more they obsess, the more they invest in the comfort zone within. Yes? The more afraid and the more prone they will be also to stay inside. And they will be afraid of leaving. Yes, the more afraid they will be of leaving that comfort because they will always expect something painful, especially since their life has been painful ever since the beginning. When children are traumatized by idiotic parents, they will definitely not want such experiences to happen again. And when you are very comfortable, it's easy to create lies that everyone is the same as, what you have seen in your own childhood. So in such cases, the sick society doesn't need prison bars anymore because people will simply reduce their awareness so much that they won't even figure out that they are in a prison. They will become their own hostages, no longer hostages of a sick society. They will become slaves of their own compulsions. And as their awareness grows dimmer and dimmer, they will become more convinced of the fact that they are free to do whatever they want. That is why such agendas will always start prevailing when a certain level of awareness has been reached, when it comes to it dimming. Yes? Such social engineering events were easy to observe in the early 90s when television became, for example, more prominent everywhere in the world. Well, in many parts of the world, not in most or all parts of the world. But see, a sick society relies on comfort. Comfort means everything that is granted to you in a certain finite way. Like, for example, how you see today mainstream media. Yes? The music that is given to you is finalized. And it's usually some useless sounds that give you a certain state or whatever, but they don't free you. They don't free your mind. They don't free your imagination necessarily, right? They just keep you in a certain bondage of you keeping yourself distracted from the pains and responsibilities in your life. Yes? And such situations, well, they are way more, right? The news that is always delivered in a certain way where they never tell you what you need to hear, but what some need you to hear. Yes, in sick societies, people who are in charge of those sick societies end up controlling what information you own and also knowing what information you own and also making you like that information and fight any form of disdain or anything that threatens such a sick society, or aka the narcissism behind it, the sociopathy, the psychopathy behind. Yes? And in time, when television became more prominent, it provided initially a lot of educational aspects, yes, programs and the such. Those educational programs were not the alpha and omega, were not the finite result, were just a result of, well, a lot of research, but based on the current technology. A lot of people would end up starting to believe what the television told them, and they would even be convinced that what the television would tell them, right? And they would be convinced, much like they got convinced throughout the medieval times and throughout the ancient times that some scribblings in a book similarly are truthful enough. Yes? Because something that is delivered in a finite form will always be appealing to simple minded people. Yes? To brain rotted people as well, if we speak about these modern times. And if we think a bit about it, well, you take into account even older things, right? The philosophies that were in the world and cultures and the such all were delivered in a finite form, no longer allowing disdain, no longer allowing reinterpretation. And obviously, those who interpreted things otherwise or who acted otherwise were severely punished, right? These are nothing else but representatives of some people's obsession for power. Yes, whether you call them narcissists, whether some psychopaths, sociopaths, or whatever other kinds. Yes, they all tend to become a group because weaklings always coalesce. Well, they definitely don't coalesce because they don't know any empathy or the such, but they just coalesce out of a fear. Yes, out of a fear of losing whatever they have. So they have to deal with one another, they have to create covenants, they have to create strict rules. Yes? In time those rules become less of a nuisance because they have to become accustomed, and they become accustomed with, well, as generations pass. But as I was saying, ignorance is highly important because it is the only motor that keeps, or let's call it engine, that keeps such a society active. That is why it is always reinforced upon everyone, right? Why is it that nowadays idiots and, people with no values, no morals are promoted? Because a sick society cannot function with people who have morals, because they will question, they will easily dismantle the madness of the idiots. Because the more people dive into madness, the more superficial they become, the easier they become to, the easier they are to have their illusions broken. But also, unfortunately, the more aggressive they become. Yes, the more they lose their humanity, the more stupidly aggressive they become. So ultimately, it is all just a prison. Yes, a sick society will always create different kinds of prisons. Religion ends up to be one of such prisons if, well, people become ignorant enough. Yes. And, well, nowadays, look at science. If you don't believe it, if you don't believe the mainstream, well, you're kind of a pariah, right? Kind of the same thing, similar to religious oppressions. You don't believe the faith, you are punished, right? You could see that best being done in the pandemic. Now there are way more sophisticated weapons to control people psychologically. Yes, chemtrails are one of those, but, well, we should not rush to take into account any trail in the sky as a potential chemtrail, even if these have been first, I think, in the 70s, the first time they were used on London, yes, as a social engineering event to see how people react to that. And then it became a more widespread phenomenon. Now people, well, governments and the such also use certain radio frequencies to keep people in a certain lower state of reaction. Yes, these are used even by the army, the secret services, governments, and can be easily spread through radio antennae. Yes, these are very low frequencies that keep people in anger, in separation. In case a government sees that they can take advantage of a certain social destabilization, like riots, revolts, when secret services have their agitators spread around the people so that to further persuade them into breaking into even more groups. Yes, and it's easy to bombard people with necessities, with hopelessness, right? With a certain kind of frequencies that keep them in a less aware state. Yes, where they're no longer thinking carefully what they're doing, but when they become more prone to reacting stupidly, which, well, such cases can easily be used by governments to impose even more draconic forms, right? Look at Europe for the best example. Yes, because there is no such thing as the so called West civilization, as you're saying. It's just the Zionists. Well, let's call them the greatest enemies of humanity who hid behind the governments of Europe and also America. Because here the tendencies have always been to be, kinder and more peaceful compared to the more aggressive continents like Asia and Africa, where there are always internal struggles, strife, and internal wars and the such. Europe had way less of these, so it was easier to infiltrate by the Zionists throughout the hundreds of years. And well, apparently they have reached significant amounts of power that they are willing to do everything, even sacrifice all the people of Europe and or America to achieve their total domination of the world, or whatever other dreams they wet their panties about. So they are always going to create even more means of binding people to their own necessities, to their running away from the need for attention, right? First, they will create and they will get you accustomed to, well, pandemics, maybe to other useless phenomena like climate change, maybe other stupid things like the creation of AI companions, making you embrace them and enjoy even more alone time in your house, making you less interested in going outside and living in nature and finding connections that may be better a bit than connection to your internet and the such. Yes, you can find a certain connection in nature if your heart is open enough and if your soul is open enough, let's say. Yes, but they don't want you to feel that because, well, the planetary alignment is going on. The energies of the planet are increasing in vibration. So people who choose not to follow that will probably go crazy, will probably go mad. And, well, you will see a huge number of people, or probably an increasing number of people, will unfortunately commit to their undoing. Because, well, they who get mad will not be able to handle these amplifying energies because these energies will constantly keep amplifying everything that you put your attention to, whether it is obsessions, fetishes, whether it is your improvement or your downfall. That is everyone's choice. A sex society's purpose is to keep you distracted with whatever tool will give you more comfort, so that when it falls, it also draws you with it within its own undoing. Don't forget, at the death of every great empire, a lot of the times the capital city burned, and probably even other cities. When a regime was overthrown, there was always a lot of violence, a lot of problems, a lot of decays. Yes? And if we are to think a bit about this, this is also happening nowadays. Yes? So hopefully this raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care. Enjoy life. And this being said, Ferencan Bohort signing out.